Γεια σας, χαίρετε. Welcome to the Roman Orthodox. You can call me Roman or Magister Romanus. Either way, welcome. So, I made the last video on 5 frustrations that a traditionalist Catholic might have when he or she converts to Eastern Orthodoxy. And then I went to Divine Liturgy and talked with some other friends who are also converting from Traditionalist Catholicism to Eastern Orthodoxy. And we came up with 5 more. So I wanted to share those with you and sort of talk about them a little bit. So here we go. Here are 5 more frustrations that a traditionalist Catholic might have when he or she converts to Eastern Orthodoxy. So number 1, a different tempo for chant. So if you are used to Gregorian chant being sort of slow and smooth and very relaxing and having a sort of very arrhythmic, I think is the correct word, arrhythmic sound. It's sort of very flowing. Well, those days are gone when you convert to Eastern Orthodoxy. Generally speaking, Byzantine chants, for example, have a very set rhythm. They're very rhythmic. So there's that. Excuse me. In addition, when readings, for example, are chanted or intoned, they tend to be done at a slightly faster pace than what you would be used to perhaps in a traditionalist Catholic church. I mean, if you're used to sort of very flowing epistle, for example, it's a very different sound in Eastern Orthodoxy. So, generally speaking, Orthodox chant is a little more rhythmic. It's a little faster. There are some exceptions to that. And when there are those exceptions, you're definitely going to hear a different sound. The tones, for example, they, instead of always going whole steps or half steps in between notes, they're sometimes going to go a quarter step, and definitely the scales are going to be quite different between the two different types of chant. So, as a music nerd, I love learning about Byzantine chant, and I love learning about Eastern Orthodox music in general. But it is a very different sound from traditionalist Catholic Gregorian chant, or what you would normally hear in a traditionalist Catholic church. There are exceptions, of course, in both cases, but that's just generally my experience. Okay, the second thing that's probably going to cause you some frustration or a little friction is dealing with the fact that women are more involved liturgically in the Eastern Orthodox Church. Now, if you're coming from a Novus Ordo background or a Novus Ordo Catholic background, you're probably used to all of that. But if you're coming from a traditionalist Catholic background, you may be very used to all-male scholas, for example, where there will be no women chanting at all, although women might be in the choir, for example, in mixed choir. But you're definitely not going to be used to women, for example, intoning the epistle, which is increasingly common in Orthodox churches. You're probably not going to be used to women being the only cantors who are doing the chant. That's unfortunately fairly common in Eastern Orthodox churches. And in both, Eastern Orthodox and traditionalist Catholic circles, this can be a little bit controversial. I'm not going to enter into the controversy. You guys know I try to stay away from that sort of debate, but it is in fact more common for women to be more involved liturgically in the Eastern Orthodox Church than in traditionalist Catholic churches, particularly here in America. So that's just something that's going to be different. Number 3, third frustration, different translations for prayers that you already know. So this is an interesting situation. So traditionalist Catholics are kind of used to hearing things in Latin, but then when they go home, they pray them in English. And oftentimes those translations are, fairly standard. For example, the Hail Mary, the Our Father, those sorts of things you just assume are going to be the same translation, no matter which missal you pick up. Okay. Well, in the world of Eastern Orthodoxy, each jurisdiction gets to make its own translations, and almost every jurisdiction does English liturgies at some level. So, accordingly, there are different translations in each jurisdiction. And that's just the case in America. Of course, if you go back to predominantly Orthodox countries, this isn't really a problem because they're in a different language and they don't have different translations. But in America, in English, there tend to be different translations, even of prayers like the Our Father. You'll hear, for example, "But deliver us from evil." You might hear, "But deliver us from the evil one." You might hear, "Our Father who art in heaven," or you might hear, "Our Father who art in the heavens." There are just differences between different jurisdictions here in America. So that might be a little bit off-putting, might be a little frustrating. I encourage you to learn the translation of the place that you normally go to church. And that usually can be done by just picking up a prayer book from the jurisdiction of the church that you attend. So if you go to a Russian Orthodox church, pick up a Jordanville prayer book, the translations will essentially be the same at Divine Liturgy, at Matins, at Vigil, etc., as what you find in that book. If you're going to the Antiochian churches, you might pick up Little Red. That's that Little Red pocket prayer book. Those translations are pretty much going to be the same. The Greeks, well, the Greeks are a little bit complicated. I think the one that's most common is the one from the Syndecmos, but you'll have to double check me on that. So anyway, different translations for common prayers. You will find those differences among jurisdictions, and they're going to be even different from the ones that you already know, usually. Okay, the fourth one, and now we're getting into sort of more serious frustrations that a traditionalist Catholic may have. So the first ones are kind of incidental. Now we're getting into some more serious ones. I'm just going to be real with you here. You're going to lose some friends and you're going to have some change in terms of your social life, especially if you come from a traditionalist Catholic circle that was very insular or very together, if it was very community oriented, if you went to a Sedevacantist chapel or an SSPX chapel, your social life really did center around the church. And that's going to be true whenever you convert to Orthodoxy as well, except it's going to be a different church. And I'm just going to put this out there that generally speaking, I have like one or two friends from my traditionalist Catholic church that I used to go to that still remain in touch with me. I had many more that haven't. I had some that didn't come to my wedding, for example, because they believed it was wrong, which, fair enough to them. I believed it was wrong when I was traditionalist Catholic, so I don't judge or condemn them for that. But, that's just a reality. Whenever you switch churches, you're going to lose some friends. Your social groups are going to change. Who you hang out with is going to change. And that can be tough. I'm not going to lie. It can be really tough, especially if you were particularly close with some of those friends. And it's tough to maintain those friendships whenever primarily you bonded at church and you met up once a week. So, that is a frustration that you may have whenever you convert. I would say that's pretty common across religious traditions for converts. Many converts coming from Baptist churches, they're going to lose a lot of friends when they become Orthodox. But for traditionalist Catholic circles, that's a pretty small group, and you become pretty tight knit with everybody else in your parish. So it definitely can feel like a loss whenever you convert to Eastern Orthodoxy. And the last one, and this one, I can't believe that I didn't include in my first video, but someone was talking about it after Divine Liturgy a couple weeks ago, and I thought, oh, wow, yeah, that is a big deal. And that is different saints. Now, we know that up to the schism, up until the 11th century, the saints are all the same, right? If they were Catholic saints, they're Orthodox saints, and vice versa. So you, generally speaking, for the first 1,000 years, you pretty much have the same saints with Orthodoxy and with Catholicism. Now, I will say sometimes the stories, sometimes the hagiographies are different, but generally speaking, they're the same. But after the 11th century, of course, the Orthodox Church continued to glorify or canonize saints just like the Catholic Church did, and those saints are different from one another. And so many of the saints that you have come to rely on for prayers are going to be different. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that as you grow in your Orthodox faith, you're going to want to become closer to these saints that are part of not just the ancient Orthodox faith, but part of its contemporary expression. But it's kind of like the last one. It feels like you're losing some friends whenever you switch to Orthodoxy. My story here is I am forevermore losing my car keys. That's perhaps a tendency because I tend to leave them in my pants pocket, and then I, toss my pants in the dirty clothes and, forget all about them. So I'm really bad about losing stuff. I'm really bad about losing my car keys. Call me the absent-minded professor, what have you. But whenever I lost my car keys and I really needed to find them, I had just started going to the Orthodox Church regularly. So I think, okay, I can't find my car keys. St. Anthony, wait a minute, that's St. Anthony of Padua. He's not an Orthodox saint. And I'm like, how am I going to find my stuff? I'm not praying to St. Anthony. So I go looking up, okay, who's the saint of lost things in the Orthodox Church, which it's St. Phonorios, by the way. But I didn't actually know that at the time. So I said, St. Anthony, I'm kind of in the process of converting here. I'm not sure I should be talking to you about this, but if you're in heaven, please pass the word along to the correct Orthodox saint, take care of that for me. So luckily I found them shortly after. So apparently the word got on to St. Phonorios that I was looking for my car keys. But anyway, hopefully so. So, and of course, God hears our prayers, whichever saint we invoke. So anyway, different saints, but it can even be a little more serious than just saints of lost things. I mean, for example, I did the total consecration to Mary by the method of St. Louis de Montfort. And St. Louis de Montfort was a fundamental part of my spirituality. And so, getting comfortable with the fact that he was no longer a part of the tradition that I was joining was something difficult. It wasn't easy. And I had to find, and luckily I did find, elements of Orthodoxy that sort of, I believe, responded to Louis de Montfort's writings, and that, in fact, provided a basis for some of his understanding, because, of course, he was reading some of the early church fathers as well. And I came to be comfortable with the fact that I can go back to the original sources, that I can go back to the early church and to the prayers of the Orthodox Church, and become comfortable with the fact that I don't need St. Louis de Montfort as a guide anymore. I've got the Orthodox Church, and they're not going to lead me astray in my devotion to the Theotokos, the Blessed Virgin Mary. So that is just, that's something that cuts a little bit deeper. But of course, we all probably have saints that we are deeply devoted to, that are post-schism Catholic saints that have formed an intricate part, or an integral part of our Catholic faith, and now becoming Orthodox. We're going to have to leave some of those behind. And that's okay. As I believe that you will find Orthodox saints that will help you, in your faith and in your prayers. And I believe that they will help you sort of adjust to that. But it's kind of like losing friends. And that's just a reality of switching churches. So those are 5 more frustrations. I'm putting these out here because I think that sort of sugarcoating the process doesn't help anyone. I want to tell you straight away that converting can be a very difficult process. It can mean losing friends both in heaven and on earth. It can mean losing your normal social patterns, right? Who are you hanging out with? It can mean, sort of getting used to different sounds, different sights at church. And it's okay for that to be frustrating. It's just part of the process. But I truly believe that the Orthodox Church is worth it. I truly believe that the Orthodox faith is worth it. So I'm just being upfront and honest with you about what frustrations you might encounter. If you've felt frustrated at all by your conversion process, whether from traditionalist Catholicism or from anywhere else, be sure to put those in the comments. I'd be interested to hear what your stories are, and be looking out next week, perhaps, depending on how certain things go, for a video about liturgical language. And if you haven't answered the poll up to tonight, please go ahead and do that. All right. Well, Kalispera, good night. Talk to you all later.